Okay, so this is part 2 of our collagraph method of making a print. So in the last clip, I showed you how to make the collagraph. As you can see, I've added more to my collagraph and I've also printed it once, but I'm going to show you now how to make a print. So let's review some of the materials that we will need. We will need a finished printing plate completed, which I have. We will use a piece of plexiglass. Now we are lucky enough to have plexiglass. Some other things that you could use would be a paper plate, a styrofoam plate. You could also use some wax paper taped down onto a table. Those things would all work as well if you don't have a piece of plexiglass. I need a brayer. I have a couple different sizes of brayers. This is one of my larger brayers, okay? But a brayer is what's going to roll our ink onto our plate, okay? I use a palette knife to be able to scoop out my block printing ink. We have printing ink in a jar. It does sometimes also come in a squeezable tube, so in that case you wouldn't necessarily need this, but we have it in the jar, so we'll use the palette knife to scoop it out, okay? I have a hand press, which I showed you all how to use in this class. We here are lucky that we have multiple ways that we can make a press for our printing. So we have this hand press that we can use, and then we also have this speedball table, smaller table press that we can use. So I'm going to show you how to use both, that way you can remember from our demonstration earlier. So let's start off with some printing ink. Now my table is already covered with some craft paper, so I'm not necessarily worried about getting the ink on the table because it's covered. You guys will want to make sure you're grabbing some newspaper so that way you can put that down as well. Okay, so I'm going to scoop out about a tablespoon of ink, and I'm putting it at the top of my piece of plexiglass. Okay, scraping off the extra ink from my palette knife back into the container, putting the lid on, making sure it doesn't dry out. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my brayer and I'm going to kind of dip it into my ink, and I'm going to pull it straight down. Well, not necessarily pull, but I'm going to roll. Okay, now because this one is bigger, I need to make sure that I'm turning and going both directions. Okay, you hear that sound? That's a good sound. That means that the ink is wet and it's rolling out the way you want it to. Okay, so I'm going to show you here. My brayer, if I turn it around here carefully, you can see, I can't really turn it around very so well with ink on it. It's pretty much covered in ink. So that rolling process right here is how you are basically loading your brayer with ink. Kind of like we go back and forth with our paintbrush in our paint, and that loads our paintbrush. The rolling loads the brayer. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide this off to the side because I'm done with it for now. I'm going to take my printing plate and I'm going to roll the ink on. I'm going to use the same method as I did to take my ink off the printing press, or the plexiglass, I mean. Okay, I'm just going to roll the brayer. Now you can see it started to come off, the ink has. That's okay, I'm not done. I'm going to go back and I'm going to reload my brayer. I don't need to add more ink at this point in time. Now, if you were taking turns and maybe let's say there wasn't very much ink left there, then yeah, maybe you do need to add more ink to what you've rolled out. Because this is the first one I've done today, I don't need to do that. Okay? Now, if you remember from during class, I told you we're trying not to waste too much of the black printing ink, okay? Again, I've pulled off quite a bit of ink. I'm going to reload it. How do I know when I need to grab more ink? When it's not filling in the holes that are missing on the brayer. Okay? If it's not filling in the holes that are missing on the brayer from what I've applied to my plate, then I need to grab more ink and bring it down into the mix so I can have enough ink for my plate. Okay? How do I know when I have enough ink on my plate? Practice. I've made a lot of prints so I can kind of see. Let me finish this up real quick and I'll show you what I'm looking at. Okay. How do I know if I have enough ink? I can see from where I printed blue the first time that most of it's covered now with purple. Now I can see, like in this one right here, some of that yellow yarn, it's not covered very well. So I want to go back and see if I can't make that a little darker. Okay, some of my petals aren't really covered, but they weren't really covered with the blue. But let's see if maybe I can't go back and get those. Okay, so I'm really looking. Now I do need to add some more ink. So I'm going to just bring just a little bit down and add it into that mix. Okay. All right. That's looking pretty good now. But let's print it and find out. We never truly know until we print it. Okay? Now I have pre-cut pieces of paper that are slightly bigger than your plate. So that's what you guys will use. If you're maybe experimenting with this at home, you don't have block printing ink, you can also use acrylic paint or tempera paint. It would still work, and you could use a paintbrush or one of those foam brushes. You would just have to make sure that you didn't get too much ink and that you were spreading the ink out in an even layer. That's what the brayer allows you to do. So now what I'm going to do is what is called registering. I'm going to register my plate. So this is what I like to do. I have seen two methods. They'll set the plate down and then they'll put the paper on top. That works if you have like a great big printing press that sits in a room and it's not a table press. That works because you can line it up and register it, and you can put marks and stuff down, which you can do on the table. But the faster method for in my classroom is putting the paper down first, turning your plate over. Remember, you're going to sign your print at the bottom, so I always like to leave a little bit more room at the bottom than at the top, and I'm going to put it down. Here are the 3 methods I can use to print in my classroom. My hands, I can always use my hands. I like to work in a circular motion, applying firm, even pressure. Okay? I can use the round hand press, and I can press. Again, I like to use circular motions. I don't know why, I just do. Maybe because it goes back to when I learned how to iron, and that's what my mom showed me how to do, and it kind of reminds me of that. I don't know. Or we here are lucky to have the table press. Okay, I'm going to very carefully slide this out of the way so I can bring this in a little closer to you. Okay, we here have the table press. Open her up. Take my paper and my plate. Push it clear to the back. Can't really see that. Let me see if I can get a better view of that. Okay, push it clear to the back. Squish it closed. Firm pressure. The more pressure you can apply, the more ink is going to transfer onto the paper. Also, the faster you work, not necessarily the faster as in you make it really sloppy and messy, but you don't let your ink hang around and get dry on your plate, then you're going to be able to get a better print because the ink is going to transfer that much easier. Okay? I'm going to close this up. Slide this off to the side. Okay, when it comes time to what we call pulling the print, what you're going to do is you're going to hold on to your paper, and then you're going to take your print, and you're just going to pull it up. Okay? Now, this print isn't perfect. This is my first print of this particular series, so I'm going to go grab a pencil and be